Yo, welcome to the MycoGeeky podcast, where we explore the fascinating world of mushrooms and the people who love them. From expert cultivators to passionate foragers, we bring you deep conversations, cutting-edge insights, and everything mycology. Whether you're a seasoned mycophile or just curious, we invite you to geek out with us on the wonders of fungi and join the mushroom movement. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the MycoGeeky podcast, the podcast that goes deep so you can level up your at-home mushroom cultivation game. I'm your host, MycoGeeky, and tonight we are going to have not a party. Let's not call it a party. Let's call it an exploration. Let's call it a behind the scenes. Let's call it a walk down perfection lane. The guy I got coming on tonight, he has definitely perfected some cultigens. He hit my radar for multiple reasons. When I first saw him on Instagram, I was like, this guy's doing everything right. He's got the logo. He's unique. He's creating a character. And then he just started hitting me with some like manna from heaven level grows. And I'm like, who the is this guy? So anyway, we started talking and chopping it up. And long story short, this episode's been a little bit in the making, and I'm really excited to have him on. So we'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to do a few shout outs. My buddy Taylor Yates. I got the book, buddy. Cubensis History and Taxonomy by Taylor Yates. This guy, he's just like the rest of us. He grows cubes, right? But he decided to compile a book here with, let me see if I can do this. This is harder than it looks. We just got a bunch of cultigens. And look, he even took the time to say hi. Thank you very much. So shout out to Taylor. That book is available. You can hit him up on Facebook, or it's also available on Amazon because it's a real book, guys. I love it. I think I'm going to be using it to take some notes. There's still some white space on a lot of the pages, so I can take little, I'm going to write real small. I'm going to get my fine tip pen, take some cultigen notes, collect information, spawn to bulk times, pin set times, all that stuff. Just try to add to it and then send that information to him. So maybe over time we can improve upon all the information that's already in there. I think that'd be really cool if collectively we came together and did something like that. That'd be great. Anyway, I also want to give a shout out to Philly Golden Teacher. Definitely friend of the podcast. Last time, I think as a sign of appreciation for bringing him and 90 on and talking about the game show, he wanted to send me some goodies. So here are some of the goodies. We got nice Myco Valley PGT Collabo t-shirt special edition available, I'm sure, on both their websites. It's a real cool shirt. He also sent me this. Fun collaboration just comes to you. Well, when you're a good-natured guy like PGT, it definitely does. And then he was so kind as to send me, I've grown this once before, but I never got a spore print of it, Blue Ape Revert. Just so you guys know, that's how you do it right there. If you guys are vending prints, that's some drip right there. Sorry, I almost said bling. I forgot we're in the 21st century. It's drip now. And then again, this guy's a lot of people have been doing it. I'm a fan of whoever's deciding to do these trading cards. But PGT is definitely setting the tone on them using his original artwork. Love all that stuff. Just other ways of making it fun. So shout out to him and Myco Valley. Links in the description below on how you guys can get one of those t-shirts or some of those cool genetics. Anyway, shout out to my Discord mods. We're working on a new upcoming episodes. Going to be called Modcast or Mod Pod. I forget if we decided Modcast or Mod Pod, but either way, I'm going to have my moderators from Discord on, and we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of moderating and running a drama-free Discord. Not always easy to do. Had a little bit of it this week, a little more than I'm used to. Anyway, also shout out to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are not only paying the bills, you're getting some of my gear paid off, and I think I'm real close to being able to be in the green. And at that point, we're going to start using that money to do some on locations. We're going to do some lab tours. We're going to take some field trips, guys. All right. So real quick, patreon.com/MycoGeeky. If you guys like what I'm doing here on Monday nights, then please consider supporting it. Yeah, let's keep it going. Let's keep doing this. I'm having fun. I hope you guys are too. Also, I'm gonna bring this back up. Our mission statement: educate and inspire mushroom cultivators and enthusiasts on the art and science of mushroom cultivation while delving into the medicinal, therapeutic, and societal aspects of mushrooms, including discussions on integration therapy, spirituality, and the decriminalization movement. That's what we're doing. If you think I'm nailing it, let me know. If you think I'm not nailing it, let me know. If you got ideas, let me know. I'm 100% all about feedback, transparency. I'm one guy in a basement. I'm just trying to do something for the community. I hope you guys appreciate it. All right, so moving on. You guys probably saw the thumbnail. Grow like FunGuy Mycology. Why not? I want to. I can unequivocally say that while I have had some banging flushes and definitely think I know what I'm doing, this guy's tubs look real good. So yeah, let's learn how to grow like FunGuy Mycology. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the show FunGuy Mycology. What's up, man?
What's up, Geeky? What's up, Internet? How's it going?
Well, we're good now that you're here. Look at you doing ollies on a skateboard and your logo down there. I love that, man. I'm
Thank
not
you.
gonna lie. My ollies were not impressive. Not impressive when I was young. I skated a little bit. I mostly did BMX freestyle, but a lot of my friends skateboarded. And yeah, my ollies were weak, maybe like 6 inches, you know. But that was
If I
back
were,
when the boards were huge back then. They were big. I had an old Tony Hawk. I mean, it was a big board. It was like I was skateboarding on a 4x8 sheet of plywood. They were big. Hard to ollie.
although my logo shows this kicking an ollie, if I were to be honest, if I were to do one now, 6 years since I really tried on, it would not look probably as pretty as it used to. So
All right. Well, if our paths ever may cross, I will bring a skateboard and we can
we're
see
playing
how our
skate.
ollies are doing.
All right,
We'll get a little
I'll hold you
international
to it.
Myco ollie competition going.
I'm
Anyway,
game.
cool, man. Well, so like I said earlier, so recently we had on rookie mycologist. He is not messing around. He's not only killing it, but he's more than willing to let everybody know kind of the game plan he has, the rules he follows. And one of the things he told everybody in the episode was out of the gate. It's this out of the gate mentality. Don't wait on anything. You got to have it all locked in, ready to go. Because if somebody likes you out of the gate and you don't have merch out of the gate and you don't have a way to be followed out of the gate, if you just like leave things on the table, you're missing out. And so I bring him up because I would say that when I heard him talking about that, you were one of the first people that came to mind. I was like, oh yeah, this guy out of the gate was doing all these things. He had the logo. He didn't get into mycology and create a online presence and then like a year later go, well, because AI is cool now, I got a logo. Here's my new AI logo. You invested early on, and I think that's we're talking about. So why don't you tell me a little bit? Let's do the usual. Let's do the Myco origin story, but then also maybe get us up into Myco origin story up to how you decided to create the FunGuy Myco Instagram and do the logo, kind of what brought you up to that point.
Absolutely. So, it's definitely been a long journey. I would say, I'm nowhere near, these amazing cultivators have been doing it for 20 years plus, but I'm coming up on my third year of doing actual cultivation. Um, and the way it all started for me, I would say, is not very different than what sometimes hear. I don't have a very original story, but I still love to share it. I have since I was in a young age, I would say, like, early in high school, I was always very curious about things that had to do with consciousness expansion and the spirituality, I would say. And I was always drawn to things that would alter consciousness. But I had tried mushrooms maybe a few times, you know, I would say leaving high school, early college, and I always had a really fun recreational time. It was always very, hilarious. I would have a good time with my friends, and we would laugh a lot. Um, but it was never anything that I would say like truly changed my life. Um, Now, years later, I hadn't touched any of those types of psychedelics or mind altering, um, you know, plant medicine. I was more in a mode of working a corporate job and being very focused on my career. It was one of the things that life had just led me to, and for maybe like 5 years or so, I just had this like grind mindset of just working and rising up the corporate ladder. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me personally, I felt like something was like I was just rising for the sake of growth, and like I wasn't putting a lot of meaning or value to it. And then I don't know where the pandemic hit, and then it just culminated into a whole thing where like life halted. And for the first time in a while, I had a time to think. And I started looking up videos about like mental health, and little by little led down to some podcasts, led down to listening to some Alan Watts, some Terrence McKenna. Next thing I knew, I was like looking up mushrooms again, and I was like, you know what? It's been like 6, 7 years, and they used to be really fun, but from the sounds of it, they can be a lot more than that. So, I sat down, I searched out some medicine, I sat down with for the first time ever with intention, and the experience was definitely not what I had had before. I would say this is where it, not the very original, but for me, very personal, experience of this ineffable thing, that I can sit here for hours trying to put words to it, but this just knowing, this peaceful knowing without understanding that everything is okay, that everything has always been okay, that although we may not be able to see it because we are human beings living like a very temporary experience beyond any of this, like for me personally, I just felt in my heart that things were okay as they were, so
It's interesting you say that because I grew up in a Christian household and was fully indoctrinated from a very early age. And now I always, anytime, so my early Bible, if Jesus said it, it was in red. So my dad's Bible, it had, which he gave to me. In the New Testament, anytime Jesus said something, it was in red. And from a very early age, I was obsessed with just what was in red, right? Like, oh, if Jesus is the guy, I just want to know what he said. I don't need all the other stuff, man. This Bible could have been 4 pages long. Like, just tell me what he said. So I would read all that stuff, and really obsessed with trying to decipher for myself that information. And one of the not one of, but a few of the metaphors when he was going around preaching um, would always have to do with worrying about yourself, right? Like worry about yourself, worry about if you've been blessed with gifts, what are you going to do with them? Everything he said always seemed to put things back on me, right? Me. Don't worry about everybody else. Worry about me. And then as I got older, I felt less and less connected to that particular religion, but I would frequently hear people say things like, "That's just part of God's plan. I know your kid's dying of cancer, but it's just part of God's plan." And everything you couldn't figure out or didn't make sense, that was just part of God's plan. And I'm sitting there going, "Well, the plan seems messed up." I don't know how that's part of his plan, but then I can concur with you later on this sense of peace that you get with and it doesn't even just have to be with psilocybin, but definitely I think it's the strongest
with
with psilocybin.
meditation, with
Yep.
just a regular, you go on a spiritual retreat, these are the things that happen. You're connected with something else, with something higher. And
Yeah.
not that you can't do it outside of mushrooms, but I had just been so disconnected for so long that it was like a reset, you know.
Yep.
And I spent the next like 8 months, and I had not done medicine probably for a year after that, but for the next 8 months, I was just in this like odd state of bliss, which, you know, I was still going to work. So whoever was talking to me for the next 8 months was definitely like, what the hell happened to this guy? Because I was just all of a sudden, like, I was a senior manager in like in a top Fortune 500 company. Like, I was not in the right position to be like, I don't know, talking about these things. But you know
Right.
what? Like, I did connect with some people through it, and I think that that was just what I needed to kind of get started on this journey. And from that moment, from after that experience, I was just like, what the hell happened? Can I figure out how to replicate that? And I just, this overall curiosity with mushrooms, I just became obsessed. I was spending every waking minute watching YouTube videos of how to cultivate, you know. I was really into this. You know, the first YouTuber I would say that because I learned most of this through YouTube. The first person that I would watch was this very young guy called Arvin47, which I don't think he's no longer around, but he was um, he was fantastic. He was just you know, somebody that grabbed their phone and just started recording everything that they were doing, and you know, kind of documenting their journey as they were learning, and it connected me to, you know, me feeling like I was also kind of like starting this. So um just spent every waking minute watching YouTube videos. And then I think probably because of how the algorithm works and how iPhones are, that they're just literally always listening to you at all times. Eventually, my Instagram started recommending me Instagram mycology profiles. And I was like, what the heck? People are out here just doing this openly. Like, I thought this was like maybe not something we should be doing. But then it also dawned on me, where, you know, maybe a little bit later, that, you know, this was during the pandemic. This was the influx of, you know, everything that is the mycology community now. It just, I was one of the people that was just kind of like had their lives, you know, halted because of a major life changing event, and had a second to kind of reassess. And you know, this kind of the perfect time for, you know, I guess these types of things to happen. But yeah, so I decided to make my own profile. And I didn't realize at the time, but I was definitely not very original with my name. There's now like a million fungi myco, fungi mycology, fungi fruits, the good fungi. There's, you know, a lot of variations of my profile name, but I decided to stick to it. I tried to change it once, and everybody told me, "Hey, don't do that. Just switch it back." So I listened to the public demand, and yeah, I decided to put a logo of my head as a mushroom, which a lot of people found, you know, to be, you know, interesting. And from there on, I decided to use that as kind of like my alter ego. So this podcast right here is actually the first time that I'm showing my face. I'm a little
Nice.
nervous about it, but I decided, you know, at some point it was bound to happen. So I'm happy to do it on your podcast, Geeky. Thank you for that.
Hey, man. All I know is this. The small part of me was a little disappointed when you turned on your camera and I didn't just see a mushroom head. Um, but of course we know that the that's not real. So I'm glad you showed your face. I think I'm finding a lot of my guests. I mean, maybe guests that sell fruit really don't want to for very good reasons, but if you're just growing mushrooms for yourself, or you know, even if you sell spore swabs and trade genetics, I mean, I really most of my guests are happy to show their face, and I think we want to know who you are, right? Like we want to connect with these people. I've had almost in all cases people who were known in the community who came on and did show their face afterwards, said, "Man, I'm glad I did that." I mean, people really responded to that. People, you know, wanted to know me better and all that stuff. So I think it's great. And you know, we got to advocate for what we want. I remember early on, I would get a few comments after I post a video like, "Are you guys crazy? Like, you're just doing a YouTube video podcast talking about growing mushrooms." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what we're doing, man. That's, you know, yeah, sure, it took some balls to do, but
Let's
this is
normalize this.
let's normalize it. Let's let everyone know that We're not like insane, weird Wookiee people who, can easily be discounted. We're normal people. We are regular normal people. Normal
Relatively.
normal people have issues. They suffer, they struggle like all other people. And in Western culture, everybody loves drugs. Whether you get them from your buddy or you get them from your pharmacist, everybody likes drugs. Every time I drive by a Starbucks and I see that line 2 blocks long in the morning, I'm like, yeah, everybody loves their drugs. When you go to the bar at night, everybody likes their drugs. So let's not act like nobody likes drugs. Everybody does. These
It's
drugs help people.
culturally. Yeah,
These
absolutely.
these people these drugs that we're talking about help people out a lot. And not that they can't be recreational. I for me, when I was young, I had a similar experience to you. I don't think I was ever probably getting a full 2 grams or more. By the time we got our pathetic little bag from the son of the farmer who grew them down the road, like, and we divvied them up amongst everybody, we were probably rarely getting actually 2 grams. So we had the euphoria, everything was funny, some light visuals. So I just like you, my early experience wasn't quite as profound. So, but it was fun. And of all the
It's kind of like
recreational,
the intention thing. You weren't looking for,
right,
something different,
profound. That's true, yeah. But, I mean, even with that said, like, you know, drinking and weed and some mushrooms, I mean, at the end of the day, that is still a very safe recreational drug. Like, even if that is what you're using it for. I have children, and I know when they're 18 to 20 and they're out at parties, would I rather them get blackout drunk and have to worry about what's gonna happen to them, or do I want them, like, hang out with a bunch of their friends in the woods and go on a mushroom trip? Probably my preference would be for that. So, yeah, I think that's an important thing to talk about. I don't think we've brought it up before in the show, but yeah, it is important that we normalize this because what we are asking for and advocating for, the right to ingest a natural substance for our mental health. That doesn't really seem like a big ask, and it does seem like the tides are turning, and hopefully all of
For
us in
sure.
this community can play a role in that. I think that is important.
But in I'm not like an original story, but I can attest to the amount of healing that can happen over a 6 hour experience. And people can be on, depression and anxiety medication for literally, months to years before it starts to make a difference in your mind. I'm not saying everybody's going to have the same experience, but if it's not just me saying it, and more and more people are talking about it, maybe there's something to it. Maybe there is something behind the whole thing.
Oh, I mean, we already know there is, right? Like
Yeah.
we are each our own anecdotal story about this, and we're just waiting for science to catch back up. But we already know. I mean, I at this point, hundreds, literally hundreds and hundreds of profound stories I have heard from people talking about the ways it's improved their lives. This is what keeps me going, why I'm so excited about, every episode, a chance to have somebody else on that somebody might really connect with and just, myceliate and make those connections. I think that's important. We can form clamp connections, outside the petri dish. So, yeah, we're trying to make those clamps happen, guys. Anyway, okay, so yes, I think we've heard quite a few people say, they were climbing a ladder, and of course, when you're climbing a ladder, you have to believe that there's somewhere else that ladder is gonna take you that's better than where you're at. And I think almost anybody who's had any real spiritual awakening, they learn that it's less about getting what you want and it's more about appreciating what you have and realizing that maybe, like you said, that sense of everything is okay. Once you've once everything's okay, then you don't have to have this mentality of, "Oh, but I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and if only this would happen, then it would get better," or "Why are my friends such pieces of shit?" or "Why is this?" or "My boss is crap," and once you go, "Everything's cool, man." Like once you get that aloha spirit, it changes everything about how you interact with every aspect of your life. So
I
I
think
I agree.
it's kind of like that thing that a lot of, I would say, religions get at when it comes to faith, you know. But this wasn't like I'm gonna put faith in this. It was like faith was like thrusted into me without, you know, my consent. You know, it's like, oh
Right.
shit, like it's always been okay. I just can't see it all the time because I live life. I'm a human being, and you're
Right.
not, as a human being, meant to always see that. You know,
Yep.
it's what part of life is. I don't know, but
I agree. I agree. All right, man. So I think maybe your corporate background or something, I think that probably just had you on point, right? From day one, you're like, yeah, of course. You know, you come from a world where, yeah, I'm gonna have a logo and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do it right. And you know,
it was actually in marketing. So yeah, for sure.
yeah, there you go. So you just it was in your wheelhouse. It felt right. Like doing it sloppy probably just didn't even feel right for you. And I can attest that if you guys don't know FunGuy Mycology's Instagram, it is a extremely well put together Instagram. It is everything is thoughtfully done. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's very carefully thought out. So um I mean, that's what Instagram's all about, right? It doesn't just have to be about naked women and, you know, perfect this. It can be about an aesthetic and wanting to aspire to a really cool aesthetic that maybe other people want to check out. So I think you're killing it on that front for sure. And then when we started seeing these flushes, bro, my God, I was like, who is this guy? Like, I was like, did manna from heaven, like, did he do another account? Like, did, you know, was his one account not enough? Is 20,000 followers not enough? Did he have to start? I was like, or is this like manna from heaven's like brother? What is going on? Cause dude, these flushes were just bonkers. But
Yo, thanks for gassing me up.
How about this? I'm not gassing you up, man. I'm speaking the truth. I am not a gasser. I'm not a fluffer. I don't. Nope. I'm just telling you the truth, guys. You go see for
Appreciate it.
yourself. If you think I'm overinflating the guy, you just let me know in the comments if I went too far. But I'm pretty sure most people are gonna be like, oh nope, that's pretty much it. All right, but so I want to show some fruit, but before we do that, again, in the vein of just being polished and put together, Fun Guy Myco said, you know, I got this little presentation. I think I want to make it available for people. But I said, send it to me, dude. We'll do it in the podcast. So he sent it my way. I'm going to pull it up on screen and he's going to take the wheel as an ex corporate robotic marketing genius. And he's going to walk through his mycology journey. Uh, yeah, here we go.
So, first, before I even say anything, I want to say, you know, I have been doing this for about 3 years. I am not an expert in any means, but what I can tell you is what has worked for me, and that's what I like to share, right? Because there's a lot of ways that you can grow, you know, fungi. There are different, you know, grains you can try. There are different methods, different techs. I just like sharing what has given me success, and you know, you can attempt this at home. If it works for you, that's awesome. If it doesn't, there's other ways that you can do it as well. But I like to give that caveat because I don't want to come across as somebody that's telling you like this is the right way to do it, right? Because this is just me, as I've attempted a lot of different things and spent a lot of money on different things. I started to notice where I don't need to spend money, you know, where I can take away things and processes that take up time and reallocate that time towards things that I do want to do. So just maximizing where I want to spend my time. So with all of that said, this is a presentation. Um, Funny enough, I've definitely given presentation like this when I was in my corporate job, but this is for something I love, right? So I'm going to be explaining how I simplify indoor cultivation. If you
All
want.
right, man. So first off, I just want to say this. I talk to a lot of newbies. The moderators in my Discord talk to a lot of newbies. And like you, they watch a lot of YouTube videos and they get a lot of stuff coming at them. And in the beginning, they want to do everything. These guys first grow. They got a list of 19 amendments they're trying to put in their substrate. And I always say, start out as simple as you can. So this is great for all the new people that have been watching my podcast, and sometimes they get feedback like, hey dude, like you need more newbie centered content. So I've been trying to do a little bit of that. So I think this is great. Anybody that's new, anybody that maybe only has a couple grows under their belt, man, really take a listen here. I think even some people that have been growing for a while are gonna get a few things out of this. So here we go.
So to kind of start it out, a lot of what I would say is my mindset or my methods behind everything is I try to think of all of this cultivation stuff less as steps and less as um, text and more as an organism, right? Because that's really what we're doing. We're helping mycelium, germinate, become strong enough to get to the point where it can reproduce, which is where it fruits. So the way that it does that is by starting with a combination of water and nutrition or food, just like how humans and plants are, drinking water and eating different things to, help, survive and become stronger. We are doing the same thing for fungi. So if you want to go on to the next page,
So
um,
okay, I will just hammer
yeah.
home here because of course we're not gonna, I'm not handing mycelium a glass of water. I'm not feeding it a roasted turkey with a loaf of bread. The point here, and this is very important because I also sort of you it's true, but then you also lose sight of this along the way as you get bombarded with texts and protocols and processes and tips and tricks. It's easy to just forget that it's this simple: food and water, food and nutrition. Like these are just the core things that it needs, that we're going to be providing it. So anyway, I want to frame that because some people might be going, of course, oh, what you. Anyway, this is not to talk down to anybody. This is just to show people the mentality. Like you're stepping back and going, okay, I'm trying to grow these things. What do they need to grow? This is all they need: food and water.
So just in that same spirit, food and water is what we are using along all the steps of the process, right? So we start by for the most part, depends again on how you're doing it, but you start by germinating spores. I germinate my spores on agar plates, agar plates, however you want to say it. And what is the recipe that it goes into it is a mixture of water, that we pressure cook so it's sterile, with a combination of different things, but the nutrition coming from, in my case, malt extract. The malt extract has the nutrition, the carbohydrates, the sugars to strengthen and feed mycelium so that it can, combined with the water, again, it has to be both together, help a spore germinate. From there, mycelium is born, right? And when mycelium is first born, it's a baby. It's when it comes right out of the spore, it's not strong enough yet, so it needs a sterile environment without competing bacteria to be able to feed comfortably and get stronger. Once it gains enough strength, once it reaches that end of the plate, we may have to do a little bit of work cleaning up the culture, maybe doing some transfers until we see a clean plate. But once it's strong enough, once we know that it's not competing with other stuff in that plate, we then move it to grain, which is again the same process. We hydrate our grain, right? Depending on however you want to do it, and there is water involved, and the grain itself is again the nutrition. It is the sugars, the carbohydrates, depending on what you are feeding it. In my case, I use oats. I put a bag of oats there that I use. And the oats combined with the water feed the mycelium. It gives it more surface area to continue its process of searching out for food, which then again it's getting older, it's getting stronger, given that it's not competing with any other contaminants or bacteria or fungi. And then when we see that the bag is fully colonized, it's healthy, it has not, lost to any other type of life, then we bring it to substrate. And in this case, the substrate, in the tub is more of the home for the fungi. We are using water to bring it to field capacity because at this point we want there to be enough moisture to carry it through, hopefully multiple flushes so that it can, give us fruits throughout its life cycle. This is a reproduction, right? So if all things have been done right at this point, mycelium should be strong enough to work on its own and give you a flush. And where is the food here? The food is already the grain, right? The grain that has already been colonized, that is the nutrition. That is what it's going to be eating throughout its life cycle. It's not going to be eating the cocoa that I use because cocoa doesn't have any nutrition. It's just the home where we're giving it the perfect home and conditions for it to, you know, stay alive as long as possible without me, before it dies, to give us what we're looking for, which is the fruits, which is reproduction. It's to continue the life cycle. So that is kind of how, like the mindset of what I'm always trying to think is like, I'm feeding this thing. I want it to become strong enough, and I don't want it to have too much competition. At a certain point, that competition won't even matter because it should be strong enough. If a fully colonized bag of grain, usually by that point, that is mycelium that has, it is more resistant to contamination. It has built like, it's whatever it is version of immunity is to, outside contamination.
So I like all of this. I particularly like the language you're using the whole way through. You're talking about like you didn't even call it contamination at one point. You said other organisms or other life. And I think that's a cool way of thinking about it because many people have said, "Oh, it's not the substrate. It's not the substrate. If it contaminates, it's from the grain." And I think it's important to think about that step in the previous step in terms of, like you said, when you're germinating spores on a plate, they're brand new. They're little babies, little baby germinated hyphae, right? And they're going to have to grow up to be big boys. And they grow up on the plate. And then once once we've done enough transfers and it looks like they're figuring themselves out and they're ropey. I mean, they don't have to be. So I do want to say it is possible to send a very tomentose plate to grain and it does just fine. And in that case, it will frequently change morphologies. But generally speaking, this mentality is really good, right? Let it grow up, let it get out of diapers, take it to grain, assuming that grain is sterile and you've given a strong enough culture to that grain, like that picture there, that it's obvious that that's very healthy mycelium. It is not competing with anything. That at that point, when you toss the 10,000 kernels of oats into the substrate, right? These are just 10,000 inoculation points. It's like 10,000 versus one little spore trichoderma falls in a cake and it's not going to care. It's not going
They
to.
laugh in the face of
They
contamination at that point.
laugh in the face of those little airborne contaminants. They don't even care. I think that is a good distinction. So this idea of really at each step making sure your thinking is how healthy does this look. I don't go on to the next step unless this step is looking like it's really doing what it's supposed to do.
Exactly.
All right.
Um, so I just wanted to, again, this document is going to be available for download for anybody that wants it. Geeky will put it in the bio or wherever he, has it available for everybody. But these are just, again, it's what I do, what my recipes that I've worked with that, I have found. I've created none of these, but these are all, through trying different methods from, different things I have found online, the things that I have found that have worked for me. And I'm sure that if I were to try other things and dial them in, those would work as well. But again, I'm just sharing what has been working for me, what I've been working with. So this is my recipe for agar, um, and for grain. Primarily I want to put a little bit of a focus on how I do the grain because I know that there is a lot of controversy behind the no soak, no simmer method for your grain. But what I like to do, and I have a video that I am going to be putting on YouTube very soon for a tutorial of how I do the tech, is I literally just put 2 pounds of dry oats and 1.5 pounds of water into a bag, into a medium grain bag. I massage it a little bit and I fold it over and I load up 6 of those bags into a pressure cooker. I am not spending time cleaning the oats, simmering the oats, letting them soak. I'm not doing any of that, because although I did that for many years, I saw that this technique existed and I tried it and I saw that I could save a lot of time. Um, and it took a little bit of dialing in. It took a little bit of time to figure out how to make it work. And that's why I kind of, wanted to make a video on it. But just to explain a little bit of like how that success goes for me is, you know, when you make the bag, the moisture that you're doing in a no soak no simmer bag does not is not evenly distributed. You didn't soak the grains beforehand. The soaking and the hydrating is all happening during the pressure cook inside the bag, so it's not going to be perfectly evenly hydrated. But the oats don't care, or the mycelium doesn't care. They're not looking for perfect oats that exist or perfect hydrated. They're not looking for like a perfect even hydration. So what I do is before I inoculate that bag, I break up that grain really well and I mix it all together again. I turn it over at all of the little grains that get stuck in the grooves of the bag. I make sure that comes out because that's where any maybe excess moisture that gravity has brought down, maybe creating a good microclimate, and I re-homogenize it inside that bag. I make sure that it is just evenly distributed to the point where the mycelium is going to go in there and it's going to see that some have moisture, some have more than others, and it's going to take over the bag. And you'll see, from the bag that I showed there, that is primarily how the bags look. You know, for many reasons, but one of them I attribute to this. I have gotten a decrease in contamination rate.
Well, so I have also run no soak, no simmer. I mostly run it in jars. I have run it in bags, usually with millet or 50 millet and oats. And, I think I forget if it was Myers mushrooms or Earth Angel mushrooms, somebody talking about how, it's just definitely not perfectly hydrated grain. So I'm glad you brought that up. It is not perfectly hydrated grain. It is slightly unevenly hydrated grain, which is why the break and shake is important. It's why the hot shake is important right after the cook. But I personally have never found that slight reduction. If I was running a big commercial mushroom farm, maybe I'd be trying to tweak every little thing to my advantage. A little more hydration might mean a little bigger yield. But for me and like for FunGuy, right, we have other factors that we're considering. And those factors are input versus output. Is it worth spending 5 hours on a process? Or, I mean, some people's grain prep is complicated and can take days. Is the outcome worth that improvement? I think the same can be said. There's a lot of talk right now about amendments in substrate and its effect on potency and fruit. And so far, the HPLC data I have seen is that it does correlate to an improvement. Amending your substrate can correlate to an improvement in potency, but fairly insignificant amount, like measurable amount, but not so significant that I'm convinced it is necessarily worth the energy. Now, if that augments your enjoyment of the hobby, go for it. I mean, I remember
Absolutely.
when I bought my worm castings, I felt really cool. It was fun putting my little cup of worm castings in there. I'm like, yeah, putting worm castings in this. This is cool. Or azomite or gardener's lime or, gypsum or I bought like a lab grade gypsum and I'm like, yeah, I'm using lab grade gypsum. This feels so great and good. But at the end of the day, I was not necessarily noticing major changes in potency, enjoyment, yield, or anything like that to where I have also dialed back and I keep it pretty simple. It's interesting how that works out. And some people can watch this video and go, "Oh, cool. I never need to do those things." And other people will hear it and they'll go, "I have to. Why do I have to do this? I have to try all the things now." Right? Like some people can learn from other people's mistakes and some people need to do it themselves. They need to find their own truth. However you do it, that's totally fine. Just like I'm not mad at FunGuy, he runs oats. I'm not trying to sell him on popcorn. If I'm not mistaken, he used to run popcorn. So he's gone from popcorn to oats, and I went from oats to popcorn. And guess what? We can still talk to each other. We can still be friends. We don't have to argue endlessly about it. It can
And
just
I'm
be what
open
it is.
minded too. Like, I'm not opposed to at some point trying something else or
Right.
changing my mind.
Yep.
I don't know everything. I definitely learn up, probably from every new tub I do, I learn something new. So it's a
Right.
constant learning process. You're building a relationship with an organism that you haven't really used or haven't had any kind of experience with before. So you're literally observing it and learning how it works.
Right. And if we
Um,
were to get really specific and technical, I mean, the more you grow, the more you realize that each cultigen behaves a little bit differently than the others. And so some are very sensitive to things like field capacity. Some are more sensitive to, um, the quality of the cocoa core. Some don't care. I mean, there's just so many little variables that as you get into it more, you might go, oh, well, I want to perfect this for this. I really love running hillbilly. So, for hillbilly, I'm going to do things a little bit differently than when I run apes. And that's cool. And other people can go, nope, I just run everything the same way every time. And you still get fruit. So, you know, you just got to decide where you're trying to be, what you're all
yeah.
about, how involved you are. I admire the people that are never not effing around and finding out. And I also admire the people that go, nope, I'm in and out. I got my text dialed. Don't tell me about, I got a buddy, Mickey, like, well, he doesn't want to hear about drippy corn. He doesn't want to hear about this or that. He's got a process. It absolutely works for him. Why would I argue with him and tell him he's got to try something else? That wouldn't make any sense. So, so I'm with you on the oats. I'm with you on the no soak, no simmer. I think that's a great method for a lot of people. Um, your
20-minute
egg,
prep.
yeah, it's quick. Yeah. Um, Now let's talk about agar real quick before you move on. So if I'm running, I do all my recipes by a liter. So we're talking about 28 grams of extract, uh, 24 grams of agar, a gram of peptone, a gram of yeast. So I'll tell you, one of my common recipes is 20 grams of that would be considered my basic plate, 20 grams of malt extract. High newt would be 30 for me. So your standard plate is running pretty close to what high nutrition would be for me. Your agar is also considerably higher. I typically run 15 or 20 grams. So you're running more of that. And then your peptone and yeast are lower, which over time I learned it was less is more when it comes to those two things. So I'm on board with that. But I think it might be worth mentioning and thinking about for me, like I'm just thinking for myself, okay, so this is his recipe that he runs exclusively. So that means he is giving his plates a lot of nutrition. He is then exposing his spores to a lot of nutrition, which means a lot of your spores are going to germinate. They're going to compete with one another. And then as you're doing transfers, waiting for that plate to look really symmetrical and ready to go for a grain bag, that means you're very likely you have given everything a chance through that high nutrition, and everything has had to compete with one another and through both competition on the plate and then, sectoring or how you're taking your transfers. It's pretty safe to say there's a good chance that what you end up with is a very vigorous specific dikaryon out of all the spores you germinated. Whereas if you were to run low nutrition, you would have a bunch of spores that wouldn't even germinate. They didn't get enough nutrition. Conditions weren't favorable enough. So I think that's interesting and, something for people who are really obsessed with agar. I tend to be pretty agar obsessed. That portion of the hobby, I'm quite enamored with. I think I'm like you. I love being like you said before. You love being in front of the flow hood. You don't like being in front of the stove. I'm pretty much with you on that one. So yeah, I'm always trying to have my agar game inform the rest of it. You said something to me earlier. You said something like, I devised all my texts so that I spent more time doing the aspects of the process that I loved and less doing, the parts of it I don't like as much. I think that's a cool mentality to have. I don't know if everybody comes into it with that mentality. I think that's sophisticated and that's I think that's worth thinking about for anybody, no matter what stage of cultivation they're at, whether they've been doing it for a long time or they're brand new. Like You have a right to not like an aspect of the cultivation and want to strategize how to do less of it or how to outsource that part. Like, that's
Absolutely.
okay.
Value your time, you know?
Right.
At the end of the day, if doing something if doing less of something and more of something else makes your mycology experience more enjoyable, at the end of the day, for me, like I do this because I like it. I want to spend the time doing the things that I like more. So, not a super fan of prepping grain and for days, which I used to do with rye. It used to take me days because you have to soak it for 24 hours and then you have to boil it, then you got to dry it, then you got to bag it, so it's like a bit of a process. Then corn's a little bit faster, you just boil it, then you dry it, then you bag it and pressure cook it. But this is this gives me, I do 20 minutes of prep for the oats, and the rest of my time I can spend in front of the hood. And that's where I really like to take care of my cultures. I like to work the cultures so that they are strong enough and vigorous enough. They've gotten enough care that all my other processes, they're gonna eat right through it. They're not gonna mind. And to the point with what you said about running high nutrition, I would say most of where I experience contamination, which I still don't think is a lot, I would say maybe 5% of my plates I lose. I There's definitely a high nutrition in there, and although I have a sterile tech and I have a flow hood and I clean out my filters, like some stuff gets through. But I rather that happen on a plate and then get the strongest plates and only my strongest and best looking plates and move those into grain. And that's how I think part of that, not just doing no soak, no simmer, but giving the best optimal chance for that plate in the no soak, no simmer that has brought down my contamination rate.
I like all that. That all makes sense to me. All right. So
Um,
now we got recipes for substrate.
yeah,
Looks
so
pretty standard, but now talk a little bit. You got a little extra water than I'm used to seeing in that recipe.
yes, and this also may have to do, maybe with the type of cocoa that you're using. I know some retain moisture differently, like the reptile ones tend to retain a lot more moisture. But I think I use the Cocoa Bliss,
Hmm.
and that one, using this specific technique, gets it to the field capacity that I need. And I was using boiling water. I'm trying right now 1 tub without boiling the water, and it seems to be doing just fine. So I don't think I'm going to be boiling water from now on, if unless I start getting a lot of contamination. But it seems to be like, just how I kind of had already imagined it in my head, is the grain is strong enough at that point to outcompete most contamination, especially the contamination that would be in my room that I'm already used to seeing. Like it has no problem.
Right.
I'm not going above and beyond on making a super clean tub by that point, because I know that mycelium, you know, maybe this is a little too hopeful, but maybe at that point, when it's so strong, maybe in my mind it almost benefits from having a little something to fight, so it's not completely growing in a completely sterile environment. Now it's building a bit of immunity and being able to not have to be babied through the process. But again, that's not really like any real science. That's like more of like in my head, bro science of me
Right.
just trial and error.
I well, I can say so. I run MPG Plus, which is specifically putting in beneficial, quote unquote, beneficial bacteria into the cake, and the vigorousness of having the symbiotic relationship between a beneficial, not harmful bacteria. Um, I just have more resistant cakes. I mean, you're talking about a 5% contam rate. I don't get contam.
That's
I just
beautiful.
I just don't get it. Like, I cannot remember the last time I saw trichoderma. Anyway, but that doesn't mean you gotta run out and do it. I definitely am over arguing with people about it. Use it or don't use it, try it or don't try it. I could really care less. I know a lot of people that love it. Great, keep using it. I know people who got great if your tubs are banging without it, and you're comfortable with whatever your contamination rate is at, why would you even bother using it? Don't. Cool. It's 25 bucks. If you wanna
I
give it a
mean,
go, give it a try, see what it does for you.
if
Um,
it works for you and it's something that is part of your process that
yeah,
you enjoy, then that's all that
yep,
matters, I think.
that's all that matters. I agree. Alright, so for your tubs, what size tubs are you running?
So I run two different types of tubs, but mostly I'm running 66 quart sterilites.
Okay. So the classic tub,
Mm-hmm.
which I
The
think for a
purple
lot of
lanterns.
reasons, so I can't run them because I end up growing too many damn mushrooms. But I'll tell you what's great
Been
about
there.
it is I think it creates the right amount of atmosphere within the tub. And I think that larger atmosphere helps. I know when I run my 20 quart Sterilite gasketed tubs, the actual footprint is very similar to a 6 quart dub tub, but you have more atmosphere, and those grows tend to yield higher despite having almost the identical footprint. Um, they look healthier sometimes depending upon the cake size. The fruits are actually larger. So I think there's a lot to be said for the
Volume.
atmosphere with it. Yeah, the volume of atmosphere within your tub definitely plays a role, and it helps manage the microclimate a little bit better. So yeah, I think a lot of people that have amazing flushes. I was talking to James Cruz recently. His gate stuff is just always banging in his tubs. He runs 66 quart. I think a lot of guys I know who are notorious for getting like just massive chunker fruits are frequently running those larger tubs as well. So there's definitely something to be said for them. If you've never tried them, they're definitely worth running. But okay, so let's get back into your tech. You're wiping down with ISO. You do use liners.
I do, yes. I have found that at least in the tubs, it makes a big difference because, in a bag, like the bag will shrink with the cake, but the tub, the plastic is staying the
Right.
same size. Yeah, so it just creates more air for side pins. So with the liner, I actually and I have a video I think on my Instagram and on my TikTok of how I fold it. I use the outside of the tub to fold it, so it
Yep.
creates a very like snug thing that I could just then prop in there and fits perfectly.
Yeah, I don't remember where I learned that, but yeah, it's a nice little pro tip for sure. All right, and then so now I think this is worth talking about. You just use micropore tape, right? Real basic.
Yes.
One layer. Are we talking one layer or two layers?
So I believe I have the 2 inch. So I do one layer that covers half or a little past
Oh,
half, then
right.
another layer that overlaps it a little bit.
Okay. So your tubs you have, what are they, 2 inch holes or
I believe they are 3 inch holes,
3 inch holes?
so
Okay.
that's why the 2 inch overlaps itself a little bit.
All right. Are you using a specific tub tech then that could be referenced, or is it just your own?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I like specifically saw this somewhere. I mean, I've seen like the regular mono tub, and the way that I started my tech or my process is really I'm a lazy guy and I like doing less if I can. So little by little, I started doing less and less, and I noticed that my tubs were the same, if not sometimes even better. So as you see here, I stopped covering the holes when I would make the tubs. I used to cover
Right.
them with tape, then remove the tape and then put the micropore tape or the micro post filter that I've used before. But I stopped doing that. I would just put the filter from the beginning and I would have no issues. Then I started not leaving it in darkness. I used to keep them in a sealed room. I used to then wrap them in black garbage bags so that they would be not exposed to
Right.
the light. I stopped doing that. Now I just leave them in my room, where there is ambient light, for during the daytime, and they do just fine. I don't fan, I don't mist, I don't open that tub at all until the moment that I have to make that first harvest. So I make that tub, it stays untouched until a whole first flush is ready. Then I go into harvest, and when I go to do my second flush, unless I see that that cake is like bone dry and looking weird, I don't rehydrate it. I leave it alone. I put that top back on because again, with that substrate, tag that I'm doing, there is enough hydration to, for me, for the most part, on average, go through 4 or 5 flushes without needing to put any extra water in there.
Wow. So, and we'll get into this a little bit later when we're looking at um, some of your cloning projects. But you're also getting pretty rapid flushes. Your second flushes are coming in pretty fast. Would you? So let's just get a little more detailed here. When you're harvesting, are you twisting, if possible? Are you cutting? Are you switching it up depending upon how easy or hard it is to harvest the fruit? So ideal, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah.
So if it's easy to harvest, you just twist and pull. if it's messing with the substrate, then you would cut it.
If I can avoid twisting and pulling, I will. But sometimes I can't. There are some, some phenotypes that are just like inside the ground. You kind of
Yeah.
have to like, or inside the substrate, you kind of have to like twist it out and then cut off the substrate part. I'm huge on leaving absolutely no substrate on the fruit, so I will lose tissue to avoid
Right.
having substrate on those fruits. So I rather clip above the substrate and leave stumps, which I have never found to give me any kind of contamination.
Right.
The mycelium just recolonizes over it and grows
Yeah.
where there's available space.
So you're trying to leave the cake as undisturbed as possible.
If I can.
Right. Okay. I think that helps for, I think one of the ways that I thought about this actually not too long ago. If you have difficult to harvest fruit and you're pulling up a lot of that substrate, you've now exposed a new surface to, the inner part of the cake to air, and it can more readily evaporate as well. So I
That's a
think
big part of it.
I think I'm with you on the leaving the cake as undisturbed as possible. For sure, leaving, especially when a lot of times people like to rip out the big clusters, right? They love a cluster. They don't want to cut it. But if you have to, you can absolutely cut that cluster because, man, I have ripped out some divots that just look like craters, right? And that is, at the end of the day, I have come to believe that might, right, the fruit is just the flowering body, right? The
Yes.
the organism is the cake. So you don't want to F with the cake. You want to leave the cake be. Um, so everything you're talking about echoes that, and as I've thought back, I have not put as much thought into that when I'm harvesting. I'm just kind of doing what it takes, and I've only over time come to want to disturb the cake less and less, and have seen the benefits from that. So I think that's a good point.
Also, to me, I feel like it just when I look at it and I see a cake that I've just clipped and one that I've like accosted, it just they look different. One looks beat up and one
Right.
looks like it's got more life in it. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
that's
with
just
you.
in my head.
All right. So just to recap with your process.
Yeah. So this is again just simplifying the steps of everything I do. There's a lot more to it, but if you were to break it down into 7 steps, like this is what I do. First of all, I think for me personally, I like to start with spore, because when I feel that I start with spore, similar to what I said earlier, like I feel like when you start with a spore, it's a baby. It is starting from the beginning. So this is a baby that is getting to grow in your conditions. And when you're buying a living mycelium or living culture, either on a plate or on liquid culture, you're buying something that was already alive. So it knows how to survive and live in a different environment. It's already been born. It's likely been fruited in a different environment, if not at least been grown. From its spore in a different environment, being switched and changed and sent to another part of the country where there's a completely different environment may change the way that that expresses itself. Not that it's going to be any worse or not a good grow, but it may look different. And you may have noticed sometimes when you buy living mycelium, you take it and you see a grow of somebody that has done a really good job, and you buy their liquid culture or their plate, and you grow it and it may look a little different and maybe a little bit taller, and you're like, hey, this doesn't look like what I bought. And I think for me personally, from what I've noticed, is it may just be expressing itself differently in your conditions.
So I think that's very important to bring up because, so I'm gonna tell a quick side tangent.
yeah.
I used to be really into bonsai, ornamental horticulture, where you try to make a big tree look like a miniature version of a big tree, right? Old Japanese. Well, actually, it started in China, but Japan has definitely kind of take ownership of it at this point. Anyways, I studied with some cool guys out in Southern California for like 12 years. Was really into it. I had little over 60 trees when we moved from Los Angeles to Cleveland area here, and the vast majority of my collection was Southern California species that just truly, if you looked up what regions they could grow in, we're just not gonna going to survive here. So I had to let a major portion of my trees go to some friends from my bonsai club, and I only brought 5 or 6 trees that were theoretically supposed to, be okay for this climate zone. So in the first year, I lost 3 of them. I can't remember. For some reason, I
That's a
keep thinking,
tragedy.
yeah, I thought it was 6. Maybe it was only 5. But anyway, I know I lost 3. And so the lesson there for me was, well, okay, I can read in a book that this can grow there, but this jumps onto your idea of starting from spore, starting from the baby, right? If you start from the baby, then it acclimates to your environment. If you don't, if you go buy, a pound puppy, right, you don't know what you're getting. So I brought these trees that if I had started from seed or from a seedling, might have done okay here. They just did not acclimate to the climate change. I moved in winter. It didn't make it didn't help. I had the trees in the basement. I was doing all sorts of stuff to keep them going, but they just knew they were not in Southern California anymore, and they did not like it.
They didn't
So
adapt
they didn't
in
adapt.
time, at least. And
Yep.
I think it's the same thing for any kind of organism, like depending on your adaptability. Like humans tend to be pretty good, right? Like we can go from one place to another, and
Right.
we tend to be able to do, adapting in our conditions. That's why we've migrated into different parts of the world, and we survive. But you won't find the same, mushrooms in every part of the world. You won't find the same plants sometimes in every part of the world, or the
Absolutely
same
right.
animals. So yeah, I mean, I like to always, go back and think of it as an organism because it makes me understand. Now, it's not always going to be the case. There are times that I have bought some cultures and they are identical to what they, look like originally, and that's just that cultivar, that strain, that genetic has, you know, has a higher stabilization or a better stabilization, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of factors.
But
I feel
that's a
like I don't
great
want.
I just want to take a minute to just highlight to the audience that I don't know. A lot of people have said, yeah, go back to spore. Dave Wambet said that. Lots of people have said, go back to spore. I've never heard anybody say the reason you go back to spore is specifically so that you're starting, you're finding out what spores like where you're at. Like, that's a cool idea. I like that idea. Yeah, so you're
And
high nutrition, you're starting from spores, you're really trying to isolate the most favorable genetics for where you are at. I think that's a secret to your success.
And it's funny you say that because I've never really thought about it in that way. So it's you just kind of like brought that to my mind. Like this is something I've been doing subconsciously because
Right.
I've just noticed it works, and you just kind of explained it in like perfect terminology. And it is definitely a big part of that. There are certain spores that probably have a higher chance of my conditions depending on somewhere else, but if they already germinated somewhere else that had a better adaptability to those conditions, then when they come over to where I'm at, they may not be the same. They may struggle a little bit. They may take even some time to adapt. So, that's another reason when I like buying, liquid culture sometimes as well. But after I do that first grow, I will try to take it back to spore, like you see on step one. Either start with spore or I take it back to spore on agar afterwards so that I can start again and see what I can get. And typically I get, stuff that is much faster and more acclimated to my conditions. The more you run a generation, over and over again in your conditions, the more it's going to know how to exist in those conditions, especially if you're taking care of it correctly.
Right.
But yeah, to move on to step two, I like to be a little bit discerning with the stuff that I move forward. So at first, when you first start out, you don't want to. You bought a plate, you've been working on your cultures, and you don't have a lot. You don't want to waste your stuff, so you put everything, even if it looks a little wonky, to the next step. I noticed that I was frustrating the hell out of myself because I wanted things to work, but I kind of already knew that some of them looked a little wonky, and I was still running them. I now anything that doesn't look like something that I would be like, yeah, this is for sure gonna make it. Unless I want to experiment and I have extra resources, I don't waste the resources. I toss those plates out. I keep what's best. I do extra plates of anything so that I can have better, a higher amount of good looking plates, and whatever doesn't make it can be tossed, or I can share with somebody that wants to try it or something. But for the most part, I am just getting rid of all of those plates. Those plates that don't look like what I would run, I just wouldn't I wouldn't want to pass that on. So I keep it discerned. I keep it like, selective. Same thing with my bags. If when I put them into bags, typically by that point I've got good cultures on bags. But even then, sometimes I'll put 6 bags at a time, and one of those bags is running a little behind. It's a little slow. If I run that bag, it's likelier to be a little bit slow on the cake. It's going to, kind of show that to me throughout the process. So I rather not. I rather keep what looks best, keep what looks fast, keep what looks healthy, and use that. Even if it means I might have less fruits in the end because I'm not running all of my stuff, I am going to be wasting less resources, wasting less time, and also not, sometimes because when you have contamination or something doesn't work, it kind of brings your confidence down a little bit. So just trying to keep myself working with stuff that is going to work out, keeping
Right.
the momentum going.
Now, so before we move on, I want to just add a little something here. Um, if you're pheno hunting, then sure, you take a germination plate, a T0 plate that's got all sorts of dicaryons going on in there, and you toss it on a grain. You're specifically doing that for a completely different reason. This is a simplified approach to growing, with the outcome being having a really strong, vigorous, adapted culture for your growing environment. So just so everybody knows, there are times to buck this advice, but if your goal is to produce fruit, and if you're going for sexy, good-looking, healthy, vigorous cultures that make sexy, vigorous, healthy-looking fruits, this this is what we're talking about here. And that's going to be the first step for a lot of people. A lot of people are never going to go, I want to start breeding projects. I want to start isolating monokaryons, and I want to do my own crossing projects. Most people are not playing that game. That's a long road. That is not easy. It's a lot of work. It's a point where you're going to have a lot of disappointments and an occasional success. Um, I think Ed Grand said something like he follows tulip breeders, like tulips, right? Just fruits, or I'm sorry, just flowers, and that they might, if they get one great cross every 10 to 20 years, that they're actually happy.
Oh,
Like they're working, they're
that's
toiling,
commitment.
they're right. That's commitment, man. So anyway, this process, and nothing you're saying goes against any of my wisdom so far, and things that many people have told me. um, vigorous cultures, pure monocultures, that plate symmetry, the rhizomorphic growth. This is all an indicator of a very healthy, vigorous genetic, which is going to colonize grain fast, which is just going to have the muscles, man. You're just, that mycelium is going to be like little Mike Tyson mycelium, right? Like anything that steps up to him, he's just going to knock it out. So, okay, sorry, keep going. Step 4.
Yes. So, um, similar to what I said with the tub, I am not covering the host for air exchange. I'm not leaving it
Yep.
in darkness. I'm not doing no fan or mist. Just not opening it at all, really. It's just stays closed until the first harvest. I don't rehydrate the cake in between flushes unless I see that it absolutely needs it. And again, this is like over time, right? Like you don't really know what that looks like until you've done it a few times and you're like, well, that one looks healthy and it's growing mushrooms, and that one looks like a dried piece of dirt, So you kind of like start to kind of differentiate. And step number 7 being what I think really is where I personally, again, not what works for me, where I find I have gotten what people are saying, oh, this is a successful flush, how do you do that, which is I, by starting from spore, give myself the opportunity to see a wide range of fruits and see what looks good, what has grown healthy in my environment, and then from there start to isolate what phenotypes I like, and sometimes people ask me like, oh, what how do you know which clone, what fruits to clone? I kind of, for me personally, it depends on what you want, right? Like if you want big fruits, you're going to clone your biggest fruit. If you want a full flush, which is typically what I'm looking for, you're going to clone clusters, whatever groups of clustered mushrooms you can find. You clone those, you take a tissue sample of those onto agar, and that next round you're likely to find is going to be significantly more full. If you're looking for the fastest strain, maybe you clone that first fruit that comes out. That's likelier to tell you that that one is going to be a little bit faster than all the others, and you can. It's not like a game of manipulation because you're not fully controlling it, but you're kind of like helping mycelium lean in a direction towards its evolution. You're aiding it. It's like a partnership, connection between you and the mycelium. So I don't know. To me, like that's the fun. That's where I have a lot of fun. I like to kind of like see what I can uncover within these strings because that's where you find new stuff, and it's where I find also that I can get those big flushes, which I think is what a lot of people are looking for.
A lot of people are looking for that. I mean, if they're not talking about potency, they're talking about yield, right? So yeah. So all right, let's keep going. We're going to get into some of that. But first, let's take a look at your lab. The way StreamYard works, I'm not able to embed the video. So let me pull this off for just a second. And I'll pull up the lab video. All right, so this is about 30 seconds. This is FunGuy Mycology, just sort of, you already see a little bit of it in the background there, but we're just going to watch this video here, and it'll give you an idea of where he grows. He's not in his basement. He's in a room in his house. So here we go.
Notice the carpet.
You're breaking so many rules, dude. But now I did, the first time I saw this video, it didn't register in my head. But I see you got the big screen over the tubs. Maybe they like watching TV. I don't know. So
As
there
long
we
as it's
go.
good
So you're
content.
in a home office,
Yes,
right?
and
You're in a
this
home
is
office.
the literal room where I do my job, my day job, because I work remote. So it's part of why I put a lot of love into it. I'm going to spend a lot of hours here. I want it to look, somewhere I'm going to feel happy. But at the same time, this is a room where I'm spending upwards of 10 to 12 hours a day. So the reason why I say that is because a lot of times, we think about when we see people growing mushrooms and we're like, wow, we have to be really sterile. Um, you do in parts of the process, in the parts that you want your mycelium to survive competing life. But at a certain point, you don't need that. And at that point, typically that is for me when it is and the plate, right? When you're germinating mycelium. So when I'm working in front of the hood, you better believe I'm wiping things down and things are clean in that area. Outside of that area, I don't need that level of cleanliness. So the rest of my room, I do have a $30 air purifier, but I don't know if it's really doing like so much work. Really, it's I vacuum my floor, but the mycelium is alive. The mycelium adapts to these conditions. Like they are literally being raised from babies in this room and really never leaving this room. So they know how to survive in these conditions, especially as generations goes on. They tend to be stronger, faster, better, like bigger flushes. This is where you stabilize your genetics. But again, that's really in my conditions. That's where it's happening. And that's why I wanted to show that room because I want to show you that you can grow in carpet. You don't have to wait until you hardwood, your floor or tile your floor to be able to start cultivation. You could do it in a carpeted room. You don't have to put up a bunch of lights. I use ambient light. My room literally is the window, is open during the daytime. It brings in light, and that is all that I use for light. I don't have a humidifier in here, so it is at regular conditions for, room temperature. I believe, like actually, I have a hygrometer here, and it says 42% humidity and 78 degrees. That's the average that I'm getting in this room.
So now I want to just say I know we're both East Coast time. I in the winter get, I don't know how severe your winters are, but I get really low humidity now, and also my regular humidity here in Cleveland area is more around 35% in the house. I'm wondering if those plants, you got all those plants, which that's another rule. You're breaking another rule right there with your plants, but you're watering those plants. And they're probably augmenting the humidity in the room just a little bit, so that might actually
Possible,
play a role. Yeah.
for
And
sure.
they're yeah,
But
yeah.
I would attribute most of the humidity to what is inside the tub. I just don't open these tubs, so they're not losing humidity. They're having all of that moisture perfectly contained and the air that it gets is coming enough through the holes on the tub. So I
Right.
don't feel the humidity becomes an issue. The temperature does affect it, but it doesn't kill it or stop it. It just slows it down. And I personally am not in a crazy rush to get fruit. So when the winter comes, I just notice that it takes maybe an extra week or two.
Gotcha. All right. So let me pull back up this presentation, and because you teased us with this step 7, which was clone your most favorable fruits. So let me pull this back up here. All right. Want to improve your flushes? Who doesn't? Everybody does. All right. Yes. I think we all want tubs that look like that. So let's get into it. So clone your fruits, especially clusters. Okay. So what do we got here?
So this is the whole process, right? Like I got a strain that was sent to me. You know, shout out to actually Marty Mike Fly. He sent me this Ape genetic that I've been working for close to a year, and it has been one of my favorite things to run and a great learning experience for me. And I'll say also this: don't shy away from staying working with one culture for a long time. You will learn a lot by sticking with one thing and doing it for a long time.
I
But
want to just quick
yeah,
interject that. That's been the new thing I've been telling newbies left and right. I went like Pokemon, got to catch them all crazy in the beginning. First year, a little over 70 cultigens. It was just too much, too fast. It was insane. And I had to decipher the learning. So my new recommendation is start with 1 or 2 things. Run the same things over and over again. Document, you know, colonization times, pin times, all this kind of stuff. Really pay attention, observe, learn what's normal, so that then when and we do this in the hospital as well, right? We need a baseline. If we don't have a baseline for you for a potassium level or calcium level or sodium level, and you come in and you're a little out of normal limits, that might be your normal. Auto whack might be normal for you, and I don't need to do anything about that. A COPD or oxygenation is going to be poor out of the gate, right? Like I'm not going to overreact if they're satting 90% on room air or on 2 liters of oxygen. That's normal for a COPD. So I think there is so much to be said for pick a favorite. Maybe in the beginning you got to grow 7 or 8 things, but once you find something you love, man, put everything to the side. Focus on that one thing. You're going to get a lot of learning done by growing that repeatedly and really getting an intimate knowledge of that growing process. You'll become sort of a mini expert of that cultigen for yourself and your conditions, and then you can start playing games. So sorry, just had to quick
no, that's
interject that.
perfect. That's I love to. That's like kind of like the whole like magic behind like I think experience. You know, you do something long enough, you don't even realize to like how it's happening, but you become almost like second nature, or like you get into a flow state with something where you don't have to overthink it. It's more natural. You look at it, you're like, okay, I know what that looks like now because I've been looking at it for the past 8 9 months. I really understand where it's at, what it needs. And then when you pick up another strain and you run that one, you're like, okay, well now this makes sense because I've seen this other one do this for so long that I can see how now when this one does this, it's similar to when that one is doing that, but it's in its own way. Like this is how that does that. I don't know if I'm probably using the wrong
No,
words for this, but
that makes sense for me.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's an innate, unspoken, not verbalized knowledge of something, which
yes,
I've
a
heard.
relationship.
It's a relationship for sure, but it's also like a gestalt knowledge where I forget if it was Albert Einstein or somebody made a comment saying that when these famous scientists have these big epiphanies, the epiphany comes without language. They almost see it. So some of these mathematicians that have figured out, they've solved complex theorems or, problems of mathematics that have not been solved. When they solve them, it just comes to them. It's an instant knowing. And then once they know it without words, then they have to actually put it down on paper. Well, okay, now that I know it, I have to prove it. I think there's a lot to be said. We've talked to Mushman 9000. We've talked to Dave Wombat. These are guys who have grown thousands and thousands of flushes of things. Their their innate knowledge about this stuff, like, dude, when
Second
Mushman
nature.
9, yeah, it's second nature. When Mushman 9000 was like, yeah, I know field capacity. I just know it when I touch it. Like, I'm like, yes, I know you do, because I know you have that intimate relationship with that entire process. So I again, just I don't think enough can be said for falling in love with a particular cultigen or loving it enough to work it a lot. And I think there's so much knowledge that can be gained from a real focus in one spot. So okay, so you did that. You had an ape, you loved it. You got a tub. It had a bunch of phenos expressed, and I'm seeing here you took 7 different samples.
Yes. So 7 different samples were taken, and not all of them made it. So this is where, like, I take multiple things because I'm looking that not everything will be what I'm looking for, but somewhere in there I will find something special, and I believe that I did. And just to kind of show you, like, starting with number two, although when they grow out, they maybe express a little bit different than the original one. There is a uniformity to the whole thing, which I am trying to now stabilize. So, starting number one didn't make it, but number two did. And if you go to the next page, you can kind of see what that looks like. So, number twos of the apes that I did, because I this is how I labeled them. The number two were really, thick, wide apes compared to what a lot of the other ones look like, which were taller, more, phallic looking. These are significantly, denser, and
They're chody.
they're chody
They're
for
a little
sure.
chody. Yeah.
Yes.
But no, what's
It,
interesting, let me go back here. Sorry to
mm-hmm.
interrupt. I do this. I got ADHD. I got an excuse
No,
for it.
man, all good.
So I'm looking at the C2 cluster, and I see 4 or 5 fruits. I think 5 fruits, one little baby pin. Um, none of those fruits look really like what is a pretty consistent pheno here of this like creamy, chody looking fruit. So that's interesting in and of itself to me, that whatever, I don't know where you took the clone tissue from, towards the base of it or what, but
I do the base.
yeah, so you do base. That's what most people usually say they do. Um, you get a really, I mean, so this is literally clone 1. You cleaned it up on the plate, I'm assuming, right? You did the, which usually doesn't amount to too much.
So I didn't actually
You
clean it
didn't.
up on the
Okay, so
plate.
you,
If it
so
comes out like, I'm not looking for rhizomorphic, but if it comes out clean and healthy, and I'm
you're
like,
good.
I would run that. I do
Okay.
run it. Yeah, and
Okay, so let me
these were good.
go back. So when you say C1 didn't make it, do you mean it didn't look good?
Sometimes, so they all did different ways of not making it. There was C1 I put to tub, and it had very tiny fruits, nothing special, nothing that stood out to me that I was like, this
I
is something
see.
I want to
Okay.
stabilize. So I wasted resources, but I was able to narrow down what I do want to continue. So number one, I put aside. Number two, made it. Number three, I am also continuing to stabilize because it had uniformity. This is number three. It had a lot more of the penis envy look, where it's like taller, with that like almost bell cap. These stayed very gray. They never really darkened fully, to the point where it was like a starry night cap. But it did have a very unique penis envy look. So I like that.
All right, so that's C3. And again,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, C2 and C3, I'm not even gonna lie to you, dude. I probably would have picked one and cloned that one and not even clone the other one, because they're so similar in to my eye.
And
But
the
it's
reason why I
ironic,
did it is because I was hoping that since they look similar, I was hoping at least one of them would be able to make it.
right?
And I instead got two completely different looking cool things. So
That is so. I mean, there's a lesson there for sure. That's the lesson, so you ran everything that looked good on a plate. You ran it.
yes,
Okay.
some of them, like number five, which didn't make it, I had to do multiple transfers. Like the first transfer didn't look healthy. It just looked like
Right.
it wasn't growing out. So I was like, maybe I can save because I really want to replicate it. It didn't. It just kept looking weak on the plate. And I was persistent. So I ran that plate all the way through until the tub, and the tub didn't give me any fruit. So lesson
Well,
learned
so
there.
there's a lesson there too. I mean, I would say most of the time, like if I get an in vitro pin on a plate, then I clone that. Right. I want to see what that does. And I'm pretty meticulous. I'll even, sterilize tweezers. I'll nip off the end and I'll just take that fruiting bodies to make sure I don't have any of the mycelium connected to it. And most of the time, it'll, like you said, instantly it'll flower and just look beautiful on a plate. Every once in a while, it won't. I just throw those in the garbage. I'm like, man, if it can't even look good, direct
That was the
clone. So
lesson learned for me there because I was
yeah,
being stubborn, and I did the same thing with number seven. Number seven was the one that I was most attached to. I really
right,
wanted that one to work. Same thing. It took me like three transfers. The culture still looked kind of weak. I took it to grain anyway because I was like, maybe I can get a good fruit and start from there. Psych,
right.
dead cake. No fruit. So this could go something to say about the way that your culture looks on that plate is going to give you at least some indication of how that's going to perform.
Right. Now, so I'm just walking through some of where my understanding's at this point. I have been told, and if there's any viewers that have the expertise that want to correct me, please go for it. But my understanding is that when a basidiocarp is formed, it is formed from a discrete dikaryon. So, when you run in a T0 plate, you're getting all these different phenos because on that plate, you have multiple dikaryons that have, the haploids germinate, they dikaryotize, and now those are all going to compete for one another in the grain and then in the substrate. So your T0, germination plate tubs should have some amount of genetic variability, phenotypic expression variability. Now, you're growing something that you had purified and you still got some variation, and then you're cloning that. So my understanding then would be you're taking a discrete dikaryon and you're cloning it and then you're growing that. So theoretically, if you don't have symmetry out of the gate off of that clone culture, it's a good indication that somehow you got some competing dikaryon in there, however that happened. Um, but then now what's fascinating to me is seeing these tubs like C2, C3 that are so uniform. That's suggestive that that's a discrete dikaryon, right? I mean, look at these, right? They're looking pretty goddamn consistent. So, but then what's fascinating to me is none of the fruit they came from look like that. So
And
my mind is there's still a puzzle piece missing on some of the stuff for me. But either way, your process is suggesting to me, and really strongly suggesting that when you're looking to have a stable of a handful of cultigens for yourself that you like growing, it is really worth taking the time sourcing a cultigen you like, growing it from spore, repeatedly, and then cloning things you really like. This process is worthwhile and
it
amounts to
may not
more.
be for everybody, but it is special.
I could not agree more. All right, so C2 and C3, those clones were very distinct from one another, despite the clusters looking very similar to me. Your first to second flush speed is also bonkers as far as I'm concerned.
That was very
Okay,
surprising to me.
so then now Pheno 4, before I ooh and ah over it, let's make sure I see it. So this is just a single little, I would say pretty average looking fruit with what looks like a light white rim, but the if I'm looking at it right, it looks like a two-tone cap basically.
Yes.
So then now we go to that and we have an augmentation of that two-tone cap with some speckling. Like where the F did the speckling come from?
And I feel like the more that I continue to isolate and stabilize, the more defined these features become. Right now, I am running, the my second, run of some of these that you're showing right now, and I just got my first flush for some of them, and they are significantly more defined with this look and much more filled in. I can't wait to post those out. So those are going to be going
So
on Instagram soon.
second run, is that from, are you cloning that, or did you then go back to spore again for that?
No, so cloning. So I'm trying to continue to stabilize
Right.
like that specific
Okay. Just
phenotype.
want to make sure we're
Not
clear.
number 4 though. I didn't select number 4 for that.
Okay. All right. But I still think it's worth saying that if everybody looks up at C2, C3, and C4, and then looks at C2, C3, and C4 grows, these are some pretty consistent and unique, distinct features, right? Like so here's why I say this. So you've explained how you work on plates. You are looking for symmetry. You're looking for rhizomorphic growth. You're looking for what a lot of people call a monoculture. The idea being we believe because there's no sectoring and there's a very uniform symmetrical culture, we assume it's one dikaryon. And yet we got from that culture 3 different expressions. Are these just phenotypic variability within one dikaryon due to environmental conditions? I don't know. It seems like it's a really strong variability that I hope to
I
explore that more myself.
If somebody out there that watches this has a good explanation for that, I would love for them to reach out to me and give me a reasoning why that would be, because I don't have an answer for that, and I am very curious as well. I if I were to make an educated bro science guess, I would think that it has maybe something to do with the fact that the penis envy variety tends to be very already mutated and like domesticated.
Prone to
Yeah,
mutation. Yep, you could link that into epigenetic factors. So epigenetics basically being environmental factors can cause mutations that then permanently change DNA. So that might be, this might just be epigenetics at play, but boy, it's really fascinating to me how so another thing I think that's worth noting, I don't do this, right? When I've done clone projects, I maybe put it in the name like, oh, this was big red or this was small corner fruit, or like I come up with my own little random, notation for it to remember it, but I rarely take photos. If you had not taken photos of all the clone tissue samples, we wouldn't be able to be having these comparisons in the first place. You just have to say, well, it kind of looked like this. So this also suggests this is a process that is worth doing. It is worth taking photos. I know Ed Grand will actually write down on a piece of paper, this is F1 tidal wave fruit, and then he puts a pen down for comparison and size or a ruler down. This is all good practice.
I
So
will
that
be honest. A part of why I do this, at least like a small part of it, is a bit of anxiety that I have for someone to come at some point and be like, "Where's your work? Who says
hey,
you're doing this?" And I can be like,
hey,
"This says I'm doing this."
that I think that though, hey, point for anxiety finally for once.
Yeah,
Like, that's good. I know Dave Wombat has said, I post pics every day, all day, because at the end of the day, I never worry about losing credit for my work because everyone will already at a baseline be like, oh, that's El Chaco. He posts pictures about that all the time. Or, oh, of course, that's this.
for
So there is
sure.
something to be said, and I know Gary Hefferly's talked about that he did his YouTube channel as just a way of chronicling his journey, but it does serve also then as uh, a way of validating what you're
Yeah,
doing, claiming
credibility.
ownership,
It's like a
credibility.
portfolio.
Yes, 100%. So I just wanted to point out, if you're cloning and you're taking your cloning seriously and it's not a passive thing, you're really picking a cultigen, you're like, I'm going to do a big cloning project, document your work, take pictures, make sure you can reference this because that's where the learning happens. All right, so now we're up to C6. This one's getting real starry night, dude.
So this was the most popular out of all of the ones that I took, and I will say this is the one that I'm personally working the most. It's between number two and this one right here, just
Yeah.
because of the definition of the look, the phenotype,
Right.
that really dark cap with that white rim and that like really defined speckled look is to me just outstanding.
Oh,
So a lot of I shared this with you I think before the podcast, but a lot of why I do things for me personally, a lot again like I see this definitely as a hobby and a passion, but also as like art. Like I find it so aesthetic. Like mushrooms to me are so pretty, so I'm looking for mushrooms a lot of the times that look pretty, that have a nice look, that have that like
right.
bag appeal. Like I want things to look in a way that I would think somebody would look at it and see that looks cool.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm searching for a lot of these times,
Right.
and this one really hit that mark. Like it
Oh,
it surprised me above and beyond that. So this next further isolation that I have of this one specifically is significantly more full. It is like a close to full flush. I wouldn't say completely matted fully, but I'm seeing that I'm having an effect on this. I'm able to
right.
fill in that tub through the continued process of cloning and stabilizing these genetics.
Well, so I can also so I don't sell fruit, never have, never will, especially now that I'm showing my face, I'm never gonna do it. But let me tell you this. Um, the more fruit you grow, the more you start caring about things like harvestability. And the more fruit you dry and store, the more you appreciate how it dries, right? Like a basic cube, a B plus, it dries cracker crispy. I dry the living bejesus out of my fruit because I am just afraid of botulism and weird stuff
No,
like that. I don't
good
want I don't
crackles.
right, you know what I mean? Just I don't care about any little slight degradation in potency if my fruit keeps dry in a vacuum sealed container for 3 years. But anyway, in doing that, there is, of course, over time you see that the basic cubes, they're so brittle. Even a larger Melmac, it's so the cap is so brittle, it just crumbles and falls apart. So these, apes are cool because they dry pretty sturdy. ODPE dries really sturdy. Ghost dry sturdy. Casper dry sturdy. I like the ones that dry into like little
Oh yeah,
nuggets, right? That's a there's just value in that.
absolutely.
So that like your C2, I can just tell those just dry into little rocks, man. Like
They're so pretty. They are fantastic.
yeah. And then these, just the spectacle of that cap when you're growing it. I mean, it's why everybody bought Starry Night, right? Everybody wanted a Starry Night. They wanted to just see that, and here you clearly have that going. I cannot wait to see this next flush you're talking about. Anyway, so yeah, you guys can follow FunGuy Mycology on Instagram at funguy.mycology. Let me pull your thing back up. All right. All right, so that's the process, guys. I mean, it's not that hard. That's all you got to do, and you can just bang. You can just bang these flushes out. So let's pull up some of these fruit. Got a bunch of pictures here. Oh, I guess I gotta actually pull that off. All right, so just walk us through what you got here.
Yeah, so this specific plate I just wanted to put on here because it was one of the recent clones. This is actually like you were asking me, do you put your clones to directly into a bag? This is a direct clone. This was no sectoring whatsoever. This was a piece of tissue that I took off of a hillbilly plate, or sorry, a hillbilly fruit, and it came out like this. So I ran this one directly,
Right.
into a bag, and we'll see what that looks like because that was a more recent plate. But I just thought it looked really nice. Wanted to show that.
Again, this is, sorry, we had a little technical difficulty there. I don't know what happened.
All good, all good.
You back with me? Okay, cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, so fungi mycology was saying this is just a clone tissue transfer and everything symmetrical. To my understanding, I would believe that this is a single dikaryon going off of all right.
Sorry, I
Flagged
think
with
we
problems
did we
lately.
freeze there for a second.
We did. Yeah, I
All
don't know
good.
why.
Okay, we're good now.
We're good. I hope it lasts. All right. The man's trying to keep us down. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so this is
So
another
this
clone culture.
Yes, right off of the tissue again, like that very aggressive growth. And this was an ape. I knew that I don't have to do a lot more sectoring from there. Now I did definitely take samples onto other plates because I wanted to now continue to expand that culture and be able to run that continuously depending on how that first plate looked. So this is another thing I do. I have a little fridge now, but you can do this in your regular fridge. Is I will run a culture sometimes from a plate, and I'll take samples, but I'll put those samples on in the fridge because they'll grow pretty quickly before I'm able to see what that looks like. But by keeping that in the fridge, once I see how that tub looks like, if it's one that I want to keep, I can then go ahead and run it right back and still have that healthy and not overgrown and over knotted. So just one of the things that I do for like culture preservation, I guess, maintenance.
Yes, you're trying to control that. You're trying to slow its roll for a little bit just to see whether you should toss it or keep it. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's keep going here. All right, so what we got?
So this was a dub tub grow. So this is just two shoe boxes on top of each other, but this was a golden teacher. First time I've ever ran golden teacher from spore. So sometimes you can run it from spore and get, some pretty cool flushes. It's not very uniform, but the cool thing about this one is if you look in there, I got lucky and got a bunch of albino and leucistic fruits. This is off of a spore run. So I actually took some clones off of the albino fruits, and I'm going to try to see if I can replicate that and get, I know it's been done before, so nothing crazy original, but get my own like albino golden teacher and see what phenotypes I can get from there if I run it back to spore.
Right, and like you keep saying, your version of it in your growing environment. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. Cool. So here's a close up, I'm assuming, of that same.
Yes, that's one of the albino fruits, mixed in with all of these regular, golden teachers. Some leucistic looking ones in the back, a little bit, not fully.
Yeah, I saw some of these where I'm like, are they just not mature? Or is that leucistic fruit? Like the one sort of dead center almost, just to the right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yep. Very cool. All right.
this was a little bag grow hillbilly. I've been doing something that I've been having a lot of fun doing, which is when I make my tubs. The grain bag that I have is already sterile, obviously, so I'll toss all the grain in the tub, but I'll leave like a not even like a small tiny amount of grain in there. And then as I'm putting in the substrate, I'll scoop a tiny little bit of substrate and I'll toss it into the bag and I'll seal it. And it'll be a tiny amount. I mean, like this thick of a cake like you see there in that picture. And because the bag is already sterile, I'd leave it alone and it makes its own, like bag, fruiting bag. And the reason why I do it is some of them I've just been leaving as little like sculptures, little like decorations for my room. But some of them I give to friends and I tell them, hey, just put this on your kitchen counter and see what it does. And they're able to kind of have like that fun of, cultivation without having to, do the whole process. And it may interest them, in my hopes.
That's not fair though, FunGuy Mycology. They have to do the work.
No
I'm
work
kidding.
done. This
They
is
don't.
an experience, like.
Yes, I agree. I like it.
But yeah, this is Philly Golden Teacher Ghost. So this is the first time I've ran Ghost. I was very curious about the Ghost cultivar when I would see people growing it. I thought that those caps just looked freaking amazing. So there was two cultivators that I was really excited about their Ghosts. One of them being Philly Golden Teacher, and I finally got to grow it. This was first flush, first run from liquid culture. So I do plan on running it back to spore. But I got a full flush off of that. Again, no fanning, no misting, no opening that tub at all. I just let it run, neglect.
Nice.
And then same strain. This is the ghost, but I did the same thing. I just left a little bit of grain in the bag when I put it into the tub, and I tossed in a tiny little bit of substrate, and then I let it run.
Mm.
So these are, I believe, a third flush from ape number 2. So as the later flushes came in, it started to gain like a little blue ring towards like the maturity, towards the end of maturity, and I just thought it looked so, I don't know, so different, so delicate, but also intimidating.
So feminine, but so masculine. Yes. The yin
Definitely.
and the yang, dude, right there. That is, I mean, I hope you're working that because that looks really cool.
Yes. Same one. I got
Yeah.
that ring. So this one actually, like I was saying, I was working that number 6 to further stabilization, and I got those first flushes. I'm also working this one for further stabilization, but that one just started pinning. So I'm gonna get to see what that next round is gonna look like in the next few days. So I'll be posting all of that, and super excited for that.
Nice.
Off that same tub, just a big cluster. This is all one cluster, all connected mushrooms.
What?
I had to get a picture of that. This one, ironically, I did not clone, and I'm very upset at myself. I put it down. I was busy. It was like the middle of the workday, and I was like, I gotta get a picture of this before
No.
it matures anymore. And I got the picture, but by the time I came back, like I don't know, I just didn't feel like it was right to clone by the way that it looked at that point.
Okay, if you say so. I
I know.
think it looks awesome. All right, so we got some more pictures here.
These were number threes. These were, I think, second flush of ape number 3. It had that really bell capped look with not a lot of speckles or not a lot of standout, like, um, like that dual tone color.
Right.
Just very gray and standard, but also very unique. Same one.
Same tub, banging tub.
You can see a little indentation in some of them. That's from the moisture in the tub dropping, water droplets and just
Hmm.
leaving, like, sinking a little hole in there.
Wait,
These were the
hold on.
number
Before
4.
you go, I just want to say this.
Yeah.
I know you are into aesthetics because it probably drives you crazy, those low water drops, huh?
It did. I was like, yo, I went this hard, and this is what
You're
happens at
like,
the end. Like,
water droplets. All right. I just had to go back and say that. This is that 4, right? C4.
yes, exactly. So it's
Yeah.
got like that, like, kind of like the number 6, but a lot lighter of a blue.
I
Um,
like the C4, dude. I am not mad at the C4 at all. I love that. It's almost a green with the blue.
like an aqua for sure.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, don't hate that. Then now there's your C2, just a
Yeah,
better image of the C2.
I will say, people like this one more, the number 6. I
Mhm.
personally like the number 2 more. I just feel like that really, like, those mushrooms just to me stand out like vigorous, like strong, like
But
healthy
doink, a doink, a doink.
for
Yes,
sure.
I agree. But I mean, just the
I
dazzlement
know.
of these, you can't underplay that.
This was a third flush on those number 3s. They started coming even more bell
Okay.
cap, like much more defined bell shaped. I thought that it looked cooler as they got on to later generations. This was a hillbilly cluster. This was one that I actually turned into a little terrarium just because it was such a nice cluster. It came in so nice. When I dehydrated it, it looked still really nice. So I put it in a little jar with like some moss and stuff. It looks really cool.
I just had somebody on my Discord do that. He grew his largest fruit, and when he dried it, he put it in a little display terrarium, and everybody was giving him a hard time, like, "Oh, that's gonna rot. That's gonna go bad." And I'm like, "It's cool, man. I think that's awesome. Yeah, exactly, just like that. That's
And
gonna
it's
keep
been
for a
here.
long time."
Yeah, I have a moisture pack in there, so it's definitely like well maintained.
Very cool. Yeah, we love our mushies, man. We're allowed to do whatever we want with them.
I
And
think that's the same play.
that's
Yeah,
just the same one. Okay. I think I got 2 more of these here. All right.
this is
Wait,
just
you've not only successfully cloned all these cool apes, but you've sent them to outer space. Are you trying to piss off Elon Musk? What's going
I'm
on?
hardworking. What can I say? Got to spread the spores. But yeah, this was just an edit I did. I thought that this specific one, I think that this one was number 2 actually, where where I took that clone from, and I just thought it looked so like galactic that I had to do that, like, overlay with it.
It's the marketer in you. You're just like, I'm going to beat a dead horse on this. In
Yes,
case there's
can't even help
somebody
it.
that forgets what this cap looks like, I'm going to remind them.
Yes.
It looks like outer space, guys. Yes, it absolutely does.
This just the grain bag that I tend to toss my whole plates in there. I just, not for any other reason than the fact that I just think it looks awesome when you see a full plate grow like this,
It
honestly.
does. Yeah, the tiger drop. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I run quart jars, so the tiger drop is not as sexy. I mean, it's just harder to pull off. So I
For
did it to
sure.
do it, but yeah, I don't do that now. All right, what do we got?
So these were actually hillbillies. They came in like a third flush, but they looked so different than what hillbillies, tend to look like, especially the ones
Yep.
that I show that I just had to get like a separate picture of them. They had this like almost like speckled look, which I hadn't seen in other hillbillies. So and they were also significantly denser, like almost completely dense. When I, touched them and squeezed them, they were like almost
Right.
rock hard. But silly me, I didn't clone these, so I didn't get a chance to
What?
replicate this. I know.
Oh.
It
Okay,
is
because I was gonna say you got to name these Oompa Loompas, man.
that would have been a
Okay,
great
if you
name.
get them again, because they're still there, it's all the stuff still
You're
hiding
right.
out in the genetics. So next time you get it, save the Oompa Loompas.
It's happening. It's happening. These were a noodly monster that I got running from Ecuador. It was sent to me by somebody that when they ran it, it looked nothing like this at all. It looked like a regular, tub of, I would say more standard looking cubes. But like I said, sometimes when you're running living mycelium and you transfer it across, state lines or, across the side of the world, it may express differently. This looked completely different than what he ran. So it was an interesting experience and also a terrible harvesting time.
Oh,
It was not fun.
I'm not even gonna lie. I'd be tempted to just throw it out because yeah,
I
I've
considered
harvested.
it. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, can I even do this? But it took like 2 hours.
Wow.
This is my hillbilly run. Once I ran it from spore and I started isolating from that first cluster that I took a clone from. Every run that I've had since then has just been an aggressive, big like canopy of hillbillies. They are just like as a cultivar, very aggressive and really easy to isolate. I guess like the genetics copy really well.
Mm.
Another full canopy. All hillbillies. These are the standard hillbilly look. A lot of people tell me, why do you let them open up like that? I personally just think it looks cool. I don't know. I like that crinkle shape. Like they don't drop a lot of spores, so it doesn't give me that issue. This is just a cluster for number 3 that I took. Um, and I think I had told you earlier that I had not cloned this one, but I found that I did clone this one. So this is one of the further generations that I'm trying to stabilize. But I just got a tub of it, and it looks nothing like this. So I'll post a. Actually, it's already on Instagram right now. It's one of the most recent ones I did. It looks closer to number 6. So I guess this is also where you start like you continue to take clones. Sometimes you're gonna it you're not going to continue to be able to sometimes stabilize everything. So it reverted to looking like something that was completely different. These were some Louis Vuittons. Shout out to Chaotic Shamanism. This was some spores that I got from him, and this was another strain similar to the ghost that I was really looking to get my hands on. When I see people growing them, I just think that wavy cap just looks very appealing. So I started it from spore, and these were some of the fruits that I took, and I got to clone one of them that I'm going to be trying to continue to isolate.
Oh my
Just
God!
to
Look at that. Rainbow Ghost likes them.
Where did that go on?
Oh my gosh! He came out of nowhere. Bye, Rainbow Ghost. Yeah, man, those are killer. I mean, I've seen some great Louis Vuittons. These are a little less yellow in the cap, but
Mm-hmm.
boy, the cap itself is just amazing. That looks very good. Oh yeah, so shout out to Chaotic Shamanism. He's gonna be on soon. We got him booked, guys. He's gonna be on. He's one of the homies. He's putting in the work. Definitely knows what he's doing. Can't wait to have him on. All right, so I think that's that. We got one more packet of photos. There you are. When you
This
take your human mask off, right? That's what it is. You take the human mask off, and this is your
actually
true
that's when I
self.
got a haircut. Like I got a haircut, and now
Oh.
like you can see a little bit more of how I look.
Okay, I like it. See the marketing guy, always the marketing guy.
These were some thrashers. Not I wouldn't say my favorite strain to run, but they were definitely unique. So I wanted to put a picture of them on there. They were just like monsters, like something that I don't know, like you know, something a single human probably like wouldn't try to take down on their own.
No. I mean, I know a couple guys who probably would, but
Oh,
yeah,
I'm sure.
the average person, no.
It's just another ape edit. This was where I got the number 6 from. So this was one of the best, looking clusters that I got off of there. And again, it doesn't look a lot like what the number 6s ended
No.
up looking like. So another tub of hillbilly. This one was
Man,
more chaotic.
those the cat frills, dude.
That
So good.
shot from the top.
Yeah, man, those I mean, you are definitely, if you guys haven't cloned yet, I mean, I don't know how much more reason you need than to see what happens there. Now,
It's where the magic is at.
it really is. Now, it is fair to say though, that sometimes you do that and like you saw from that first clone to a grow, right? You get something really stable, but then you just said that you had one where you cloned that grow and then it looked different from that grow. So every time you clone, you might be looking at something different. And I don't know at what point you go, okay, so I've done this. Now I'm going to go back to spore. But that's that game that we play. It's more the art than the science of going back and forth. Should I keep cloning? Should I go back to spore? Do I do both? How much free time do I have? How much
I
space in
say
my
it's like
fridge?
depending on what you want, right? Like if you've ran something and you've cloned it like 4 or 5 times and you're starting to notice you're not really getting anything new. Like I'm not gonna run that one I just showed you that I told you that ended up looking like something else. I don't need to run that again
Right.
because it already looks like something else I have. So I stop working on that. And then if I keep working on things and they all continue to look like the number 6 and the number 2, then maybe I'll take it back to spore and I'll start it all over again. And then, kind of like depending on what I want to find. Like you want to find variety, take it back to spore. You're feeling like your culture is senescing and it's not, doing the same things that it was doing, take it back to spore. Like
Right.
listen to your culture, I guess.
I like that. I mean, that statement right there, that can be even more broadly applicable. Listen to your culture for sure. Yes, these days. Wow. We got to listen to our culture. What is our culture telling us? Well, man, so all this has been great. I mean, I've heard so many things from so many people. So when I hear stuff that is a new way of thinking about something, I'm always really excited. And you have definitely done that. Thank you so much for being on and really being transparent and talking through your process. I know as a general rule, you do not you're not like an official vendor who always has things available, but you do periodically share your work. Is that correct?
Yeah, so
Awesome.
I feel bad sometimes because I do get a lot of messages of people asking me, and I want to be always able to share that, but I don't have I'm not a vendor. I don't have that commitment to always be updating an inventory just because of the lifestyle that I live and the things that, like I said, I value my time. I like to do
Right.
different things. I haven't set myself up as that, but
And
I
you're
do
like
love.
me, you have a day job. So
Yes,
this is
exactly.
not, it's a different paradigm. It's a paradigm shift. Like
Exactly.
my
But I
bills
do
get paid
love
with
what
my
I
day
do.
job.
Like because I have this passion and I have interest now. People asking me for stuff. I don't want to just tell people no, go look for it somewhere else because I know that I am stabilizing some different stuff. Maybe you're not gonna find like everywhere. So
Right.
I am making it available under limited supply when I do have it. So like as I'm running stuff, I will do a jar of liquid culture. I'll take some extra plates and I'll be like, okay, I can share some of this stuff now that I personally feel comfortable sharing because I don't want to put stuff out there just to have stuff be out there because I'm not a genetic vendor. I'm not putting in all that work to be looking after a bunch of cultures. I just have the projects that I enjoy that I'm working on, and if I feel like this is ready for people, then at that point I will make it available. So
Well, I think that's great because some of those definitely need to be shared. They look too good to, we're just going to sit over here and be jealous. We want to get our hands on some of it. So
So
I
I
think
do
that's
have a
great.
drop coming in the next week or two, based off of how these flushes come out. I want to see and show people how they look like before I make it
Cool.
available. So keep an eye out, and it'll be the website link is on my Instagram bio. It's funguy-mycology.com right now. And I also want to make it a point, I am primarily like I do this for the love of what I enjoy to do. I wouldn't say I do this for people, but I love to do it, so I will always want to answer and help people. So if you reach out to me and you have questions, I will answer back. I will, for the most part, I try to get to everybody. It may take me a little bit of time, but if you have a question, do not hesitate. I like to have these conversations, so I'm here for it.
That's awesome. So, all right, guys. So links are going to be in the description below. If you don't follow him on Instagram, you definitely should. Even if you don't ever want to get any of his occasional top secret, hope you catch him drops. It's good Instagram content. So I invite you to follow good guy, FunGuy Mycology. He's one of my favorite Instagram accounts for sure. And now we get to see the real guy, get to know what a cool guy he is. So all the better. All right, man. Well, I'm sure it won't be the last time we have you on. Definitely enjoyed talking with you, and cannot wait to see some of these next generation apes. These are, I just had somebody recently who wanted a good ape, and I think I got him a good ape. But boy, they probably would have not minded seeing some of these apes. So all you ape lovers out there, keep your eyes peeled. There might be some cool stuff coming up in the works here. So, all right. So thank you very much. And until next time, wish you well and hope you do not lose any of the passion and enthusiasm you have for what you're doing, my friend.
Thank you so much, Geeky. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the time to talk tonight, and I hope you have a good evening. And thank you, everybody.
Thanks, man. All right, let's round the bend, guys. We got a couple hours in. I'm trying to keep a little bit shorter. We've had some marathons. I had one guy message me the other day. He goes, "It took me a week, but I finally got through your 5-hour Dave and Nikki marathon podcast. That was fun. That was special. But most people seem to want a little bit more digestible format. So that's what we're trying to do here. So again, tonight we sat down and had a blast with FunGuy Mycology. He's given me definitely some things to think about and tricks to try. Stay tuned next week. We're going to have another exciting, I'm not going to say who, you'll find out soon enough, but another very interesting mycologist who kind of dabbles in a lot of different stuff. So anyway, stay tuned next week. And until then, hope you guys have fun growing mushrooms at home.